Again, my pleasure to welcome you to Broadsheet Radio, the #1 business radio broadcasting from the city of Lagos. Headlines are topical issues of the week. The week was full of news, and we are happy for those of us that work in the newsroom. The topic of interest is MPR. MPR is monetary policy rate. It's a rate that the Central Bank of Nigeria and of any nation dishes out from time to time for monetary policy programs. It's my pleasure to welcome and have Mr. Andy Saku, a stockbroker and a businessman, an analyst, try to teach us, explain to us what we need to know about the MPR. By the way, Andy, you're welcome. Once more to have you. It's always a pleasure.
Always my delight to be here.
You're welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, for the people out there, not the academic, not the professionals, the street person, what is this MPR? Can we try to bring it down to the level of the ordinary person to understand what MPR is, by way of definition or explanation?
Okay, so the way for me to go about this is to understand the way the central bank relates to other banks in the general economy, as well as government or government agencies, and in some cases, even individuals. By the functions of the central bank, we understand that the central bank sometimes has to be a lender of last resource to the community in which it thrives. Ordinarily, when people need to borrow money, they will approach money banks or commercial banks. And those banks, making their assessments, will lend them some funds depending on whatever their requirements are. Now, in a situation where central bank now has to extend credit or give loan to the banks, because the central bank acts as a banker to other banks, there may be a reason where a First Bank, a Zenith Bank, or any other bank may want to take some loan from the central bank. So the monetary policy rate is that rate or interest rate at which the central bank will be willing to give of her money to any other party, whether that be a commercial bank or government. So it provides the base, it provides the minimum. And in some cases, the monetary policy rate is simply referred to as the minimum discount rate. So that is the rate at which the central bank will be able to lend. And that the implication is that if the central bank is going to give back money at say 10%, remember the central bank has the might of government.
Yes.
And therefore, if it wants to extend money at 10%, it means if the commercial bank is going to get that money at 10% from central bank, they cannot loan that same money at the same rate.
Yes.
It will be MPR plus
yes.
something.
Yes.
And that's how commercial banks relate with the central bank in also driving loans and money creation.
Thank you very much. Now, in the course of the week,
yes.
Precisely on the 22nd of November,
yes.
Central Bank announced that they moved up the MPR by 100 basis points, landing at somewhere around 16.5%. What is the implication to the economy, to the average person, to the person who uses the money from commercial bank? How would it affect us, the ordinary people?
Okay. So there are two basic ways the MPR affects the ordinary person. if you come from the deposit savings side, it simply means that if you're going to put your money in a commercial bank, you are likely to get a higher rate of return by virtue of an increase in the monetary policy rate. Because it means for banks to be able to take money from you, they certainly cannot offer you a rate that is less than the MPR.
Yes.
It would be unusual. That's on the deposit saving side. However, if you are going to be on the borrowing side, it's not the same effect. And by the way, the increase in the monetary policy rate based on the judgment of the central bank is to help to moderate the effect of inflation.
Correct.
And that's where the issue of you getting a higher return comes in. But you see, in doing that, there's another dimension to it. For the borrower, it means that money will be more expensive if they seek to borrow from the banks. And that's where the manufacturers are usually crying foul, because that they get more heat below the belt with every increase in the cost of funds. If their inputs become more expensive, it's like taking from one side and you're paying the other side. If their inputs become more expensive, production cost shoots up, and that is transferred again to the average man down the street. However, one of the dilemmas the central bank seeks to balance is those conflicting interests. And because they have the benefit of seeing both sides, they tend to weigh the consequences of the positive and the negative, and then decide at what point to peg that rate.
Yeah, a little bit confusion, maybe confused somewhere there. Now, it seems to me that they are pursuing inflation with MPR,
Yeah.
trying to match it or overtake it.
Okay.
Now, from the analysis we just had,
Yeah.
if the cost of production increases on account of the cost of input, one of the inputs being money, and the price of the goods being passed to the consumer also increases, has it termed inflation?
And that's the paradox.
Yes.
That's the paradox, and it's a very visible paradox. Unfortunately, in life, something has to give way for another to take place, and we continue to deal with those choices all the time. For example, my presence in this studio right now means something somewhere has to give way.
Yes.
So it's about value accretion at the end of the day, prioritizing what is key in a given season or moment. So that paradox is real, and we'll continue to live with it. So it depends on which side of the pendulum you find yourself at any given point. There are those who are not concerned about the inputs that have been affected by inflation, fueled by a rise in the MPR also. However, the man that is on the investment side, who is looking at, okay, before MPR was moved to say 15%, my return on my own investment was just about 5. But with a rise in MPR to 20, it has also moved my own return level to say 15 or more, which means I have additional income that I can spend. But whether that additional income will match the increase in inflation on this other side is arguable. And that's usually the dilemma.
Okay, I believe, listener, you have been blessed you have listened to us, and this explanation must have lightened some areas that were dark on your understanding of MPR. My pleasure once more. Please stay put. You will still have a time to listen to one more. Thank you very much. Stay tuned to the radio station.